Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So it's March, which means St. Patrick's Day, but it also means Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. The way I'm going to break down this video is in three parts. I'm going to have the first part be cerebral palsy as a whole and explain the basics of it and how it works. The second part is going to be a little backstory about myself. And the third part is going to be how I'm living now with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is caused when the brain cells that are responsible for muscle movement and control fail to develop properly or die as a result of injury. Now, cerebral palsy is caused by many different factors. Most people are usually born with cerebral palsy because of something that happens either right before the child is about to be born or right after the child is born. Premature birth is one of the high risk factors of how people develop cerebral palsy. Not only premature birth, but also weighing under about 5 pounds can put you at a high risk factor of developing cerebral palsy. Now, there is many different ways people can develop cerebral palsy, but to list a few, some are bleeding of the brain, which is what I had, whether in the womb, during birth, or after birth, seizures at birth or within the first month, or sometimes even genetic condition. Now, moving on to the 4 brain types and the 4 physical types of cerebral palsy. Now, if I mispronounce any of these terms, I apologize. I'm not a medical professional. I'm really bad at pronouncing things, so bear with me. The different types that can be affected are the cerebral cortex, which can cause stiff muscles, aka spasticity, the basal ganglia, which can cause uncontrollable movements, the cerebellum, which can cause poor balance and coordination. Now, the 4th type is a mix or combination of 2 or more types associated with damage in multiple areas of the brain. Now, moving on to the 4 types of physical, we have monoplegic, which means it affects one limb, usually an arm. Hemiplegic, which affects one side of your body, whether that be the left or the right side. Then we have diplegic, which affects either both arms or both legs. And then we have quadriplegic, which affects all 4 limbs. Now, unfortunately, there is no cure for cerebral palsy. It is just something you live with. And as I mentioned, there are multiple ways that causes cerebral palsy and multiple different types. There's such a wide range. What I gave you is just the basics, and if you want to research it more, I will provide all the links of all the screenshots I used in this video. Moving on to part 2. So I was born on June 1987, and I was actually born 3 months early. I was supposed to be born in September and I came in June. This definitely gave my parents a really big scare because most babies that are born this early on in pregnancy do not live. But thankfully I survived. I weighed in at a total of 1 pound and 7 ounces. When I was born, I had bleeding on the left side of my brain. When I was born, they did say I was going to have a lot of complications down the road, that I was either going to be mentally handicapped, deaf, blind, who knows, a combination of things. And as it would be, I came out with only having cerebral palsy. I have what is called spastic hemiplegia cerebral palsy. I have it very minor. Now, if you refer back to the first part of this video, spastic means my cerebral cortex was affected, and hemiplegia means that it affects one side of my body, and that side is my right side. Growing up, I was a fairly normal kid, and my parents didn't even know I had cerebral palsy until much later when I started walking. I had what was called a drop foot, which I will insert a picture of so you can see, which basically means I was not walking correctly and therefore dragging my foot. Now, I had surgery on it when I was 4, and basically what they did was they corrected the dropped foot and also stretched out my tendons so that my leg would grow properly and at the same rate as my left leg. I was in an adorable pink cast for months that went all the way up to my thigh, and if you thought that would stop me from literally doing anything, you were wrong. My mom said I was the most energetic kid even though I walked like a goddamn penguin for months. After the pink cast was finally removed, I did wear a brace for, I'm not honestly sure how long, but I wore a brace to correct my footing. That way I could walk practically normally. I remember going through lots of physical therapy while in the cast and in the brace, but to me it was honestly a lot of fun. As I mentioned, my cerebral palsy does affect my right side. So growing up, my parents saw that when I was using utensils or a pencil that I would automatically use my left hand. So they kind of just rolled with it. I basically use my left side for everything. When school came around, my parents were actually really scared. They were afraid I was gonna get bullied. And thankfully, I never really got bullied. Definitely growing up, I had a lot of people talk crap about me behind my back, and I would hear it secondhand from my friends who would stand up to me. But a lot of people just either accepted my disability and wanted to be friends with me anyway, or they just never talked to me. I was lucky enough to have a really good support group who wanted to be in my life regardless of my disability. Ever since I had my surgery at 4, I do walk with a limp. Now, for me, the limp isn't noticeable at all until I get really tired from walking a long period of time. To other people though, the limp is usually noticeable right away. I remember when I used to work retail, I would have coworkers ask me if I was alright like 20 minutes into my shift, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine, and they're like, oh, well, you're limping a little bit, and I'm like, oh, it's no big deal. Usually when I would get questions about why I was limping, if I didn't really feel like honestly answering, I would just come up with some dumb excuse, like I fell down and hurt my ankle, or I got into a accident of some sort. I only really told a handful of my friends about my disability when I was growing up. Now I'm definitely way more open about it, and I try to be as active in the community as possible. Now that's my little backstory, so on to part 3. Honestly, I'm incredibly lucky to have as minor of a disability as I have. I definitely can't vouch for a lot of people in the community who have it way harder than I do. I am very lucky to be able-bodied and function pretty normally. The only real issues I have is that I walk with a limp, and I only walk with a limp because my left leg is an inch longer than my right. I also can't wiggle my toes on my right foot, and my motor skills definitely show when I move my hands. As you can see, the motor skills in my left hand are way more fluid than in my right hand, and that's kind of just how it is. I do everything with my left side, so honestly having not the best motor skills in my right side doesn't hinder me that much. I'm pretty able-bodied for the most part. I can walk perfectly normal minus the limp. The only thing I can't do properly is squats. But yeah, as I said, I'm incredibly lucky and honestly can't speak for most of the community that has it way harder than I do. I will never know what it's like to be in a wheelchair or to not even be able to talk or even have seizures. I'm so grateful that I can have a voice in this community and help people truly understand what it's like with this disability and what people go through on a daily basis. If you want to read up on any more about cerebral palsy, I will link a bunch of articles in the description. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching me talk about my journey and something that is me but doesn't define me. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe and turn on that notification bell because it helps me out a lot. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!